Chapter 7, Creating a Research Agenda. Our objectives: explain what a data collection system is and how it relates to the 16 life safety initiatives. Explain how research and development could be used by emergency services to add another element of safety. And describe some of the ways research can benefit risk management. List some of the dangers of implementing changes without research. Explain the use of statistical data from incident reports and the importance of accuracy. And discuss the differences between quantitative data and qualitative data. Identify the effective components of a hypothesis and how it can be used in research. Discuss the unique problem of exposure as related to injury and line-of-duty death. Explain how data collection, analysis, and utilization are used in conjunction with one another. One of the greatest problems with the advancement of the fire service is the lack of hard data available to us. Now, law enforcement has been more successful at collecting data in regards to their needs and thus have been able to secure more grants and resources. It's hard to justify grants when we can't really prove what we do, what we experience, and what we need. As a result, the fire service has worked hard over the past several years to collect data and get grants to the forefront. And a good example is using information gained from the National Fire Incident Reporting System, or NFIRS, and converting that into legislation for the Fire Act grants have proven very successful. Statistical reports are only as good as the data that is recorded. So essentially, garbage in, garbage out. So inaccurate data cannot produce accurate reports. So accuracy is very important when we're trying to get this data. So remember that when you're filling out your reports. Once data is obtained, the information is of little use until it is researched, analyzed, and utilized. And I do want to say, right now there is some legislation going through Congress where they're trying to get it pushed for the CDC, and you guys may or may not know, but anything the CDC studies has to be approved by the government, basically the Congress, Senate and things of that nature. So one thing that is being pushed right now is for the CDC to start studying cancer as related to the fire profession. Now, we are very fortunate here in Georgia quite recently that they passed the cancer bill, and that again is in Georgia, where all municipalities that have a fire service are required to have an insurance policy on every member of said department. So if they develop one of a list of cancers commonly associated with exposure to smoke and fire and things of that nature, then it pays a one lump sum to help with medical expenses. So that is a good thing to start with. But hopefully, as I said, that this legislation will get through Congress and the CDC will begin studying it more. And by studying it more, then we're going to get more hard facts. You're going to get, I see, better turnout gear, possibly better treatment and benefits, maybe even something to the effect of like the black lung for the coal miners, all the coal miners that developed black lung from working in the coal mines. So hopefully our end goal here is to make it safer where no one experiences any kind of sickness or whatnot. But I do see in the short term that we start taking care of our fellow firefighters who have become ill just due to hazards of the job. Now, Initiative 7 calls for a national research into utilizing a complete data collection system. A research agenda would clarify what data needs to be collected and identify the problem with the way information is recorded today. Now, research can be used to benefit the safety of emergency responders, and that goes without question. Now, some components of the research used by other industries that could assist fire and emergency service include types of research, categories of data, using research hypothesis, and research and development. Types of research. Although there are many different types of research, most can be categorized as basic or applied. Now, basic research, also known as pure research, is conducted out of curiosity and leads to no immediate product or treatment. Applied uses knowledge gained from basic research to accomplish some sort of specific goal. Categories of data. Data can take different forms, falling into the broad categories of qualitative and quantitative. Quantitative data, also known as empirical data, consists of hard data from such things like black box from fire crashes, fire truck crashes, the black box that monitors your speed, braking, and things of that nature. Qualitative data takes into account the feelings and opinions of people involved and witnesses to the crash. So qualitative is more of subjective, where quantitative is more objective or hard, factual data. Using a research hypothesis. First, let's make sure we understand what a hypothesis is. And that's basically a prediction of why something occurs or will occur based on some sort of scientific evidence. And they like using the term if and then. So if water boils, then it will turn into a gas at 212 degrees. It is kind of an example of that. So in firefighting, one such hypothesis is if improper size up contributes to injuries, then increased training will make firefighters safer. Now, the first half of the statement is based on fact, and the second half draws on a conclusion from it. So a good hypothesis must be testable and thus supported or disproved by some sort of experiment, if you will, or life, whatever the case may be. Now, in order to come up with these hypotheses, obviously research is needed. Also, with research comes development. It is rare that research and development is addressed in the fire service unless we are talking about some sort of new equipment or technology. Now, Initiative 7 identifies the need for better research, and research is worthless unless the development follows. Identifying any mistakes or contributing factors can lead to engineering plans to prevent them from happening again. So what we're getting at here is we need to start doing research and developing technology based on that research to improve our situation. And in the fire service, we really have a hard time with change. What's the old adage? The fire service, fighting fire for 100,000 years unimpeded by progress. We don't like change. But we need to start shifting that mindset and getting research going and developing things and making our profession more on the cutting edge and safer as a whole. So let's look at the National Research Agenda right quick. And it is a coordination of a national research agenda would organize and prioritize what research is needed to save lives in the fire service. Now, firefighters have always used research to make firefighting safer, and examples being the Lloyd-Layman's test on shipboard fires in the 1940s. Research was then picked up by a group of Iowa State University students who calculated required water for extinguishment along with the development of the combination method of attack. And then other examples of research out there, quote, pushing the fire. And in 2005, the National Fire Service Research and Symposium was held. Now, the group of participants created and ranked specific areas of the fire service that could benefit the most from additional research. Now, this text has arranged the key components to the research agenda by the initiatives. First, Initiative 1, defining a culture change. Because an existing culture is based on beliefs and attitudes, research specifically developed to the values and resistance to change would be beneficial to ensure a successful change. A cultural change must take place both individually and organizationally. By identifying the reason for the resistance, the 4 E's, quote, of prevention could be applied. And that is education, which is training and practice, engineering, which is research, and environment, which is changing the way something is presented, or even enforcement or punishment. Now, Maslow's hierarchy of needs theorizes that the only way to achieve self-esteem or self-gratification is to first believe that you are safe. Initiative number 2, enhancing accountability. Now, accountability is nothing more than a decision and starts with personal accountability. Others see your personal accountability and follow your lead. Research involving ways to improve personal accountability could shed light on new systems for teaching accountability. Organizational accountability is generally a corporate type decision, and it starts from the top and leads to the development and change. Applying risk management techniques, initiative number 3. Now, many firefighters feel that risk management is an area in which continuous improvement has the best opportunity to increase safety. Risk management is not addressed in the first 2 initiatives. One of the best explanations is that without a cultural change and personal accountability for safety, risk management is less likely to succeed. Today's risk management is at the forefront of some of the biggest discussions in the fire service. Now, hot topics tend to invoke a lot of passion and drive that evolves into action. Without solid research and new topics under the umbrella of risk management will be less effective. We have software to address some concerns, but more scientific research and validations are needed. Flashover and collapse predictions. There has been much discussion about the way the buildings burn. Now, NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, has done tests that show how buildings burn and how our estimates about time till flashover are way outdated. Results of the research, coupled with the flashover statistics, could give firefighters and officers clues in order to evacuate before this catastrophe occurs. Situational awareness. Lack of situational awareness has been identified in many fireground fatality reports, specifically by NIOSH, or the National Institute for Occupational Health and Safety. Once the decision has been made to make entries, some of the situational awareness load has to be carried by the personnel outside of the hot zone. Researching ways to monitor personnel, the building, and the environment through technology could pay huge dividends. Similar types of technology are already used in other fields, but need to be adapted to withstand the rigors of structural firefighting. Another area, wildland firefighting operations. Besides decisions on tactics, or in this case reactive, research needs to be supported in the planning or wildland interface zones, so being proactive. Researching what practices have been successful and enforceable in the past would benefit the fire service in general. Another potential area of research for interface problems is improving real-time mapping. Computer modeling of slopes and wind-driven fires applicable to specific areas would also be beneficial in forecasting the direction and possible threats of a moving wildfire. Finally, risk management for incident management. Because every decision in incident management is based on risk, the hierarchy might be more accurately demonstrated by placing incident command as a critical element of risk management. Incident command exists to support risk management, and the system must be applicable to all risk at all incidences, as well as expandable and easy to implement. The system would involve training, application, and an evaluation phase. Initiative 4, Eliminating Unsafe Acts. At the heart of crew resource management is the empowerment of individuals to identify and prevent unsafe acts. The aviation industry has successfully used this to improve safety and performance, as well as the marine industry has taken the aviation version and adapted to their specific needs. The fire service research could investigate components applicable to emergency service and formulate an effective system. Crew resource management maximizes the use of all personnel on board to improve the chances of a favorable outcome. Researching ways to implement the key concepts into a rapid intervention would be very beneficial. Implementing training and certification standards, initiative number 5. So, starting with the recruit level training, certification starts at this level, and the research needs to begin there as well. The problem is that we expect the new breed of firefighter to have discipline and control, but also know how to incorporate risk management and situational awareness. So we should be incorporating the 16 initiatives into their initial training programs. One of the areas of research with the most potential for improvement in safety is the Fire Academy. It is to look for variations of the parameter organization for applicable in the fire service. Another area that could be looked into is the disparity between certification levels and the duration of initial training programs. Next, instructional development. An instructor who cannot adjust the way he or she teaches to different groups over the years has a difficult time of being effective. Many seasoned instructors may have difficulties implementing risk management and empowerment or even safety in general. Research could help identify some of the cultural issues and opinions that are allowing outdated views of heroism to be cultivated by the instructor. The essential mentality of do as I say, not as I do. Live fire training. Although live fire training is valuable to the firefighter's education, it also carries many of the inherent risks associated with genuine fires. Much data exists in reports of near misses, injuries, and deaths that could be researched to identify common, critical, or contributing factors. By analyzing the components, conclusions can be incorporated into training materials, instructor updates, and future revisions of the NFPA 1403 standard on live fire training evolutions. Training simulators. Although prevalent in the military and aviation industries, firefighting simulations generally lag behind. Technology is available to simulate actual firefighting experiences in a virtual reality realm. Some of the benefits of simulation training include training in a safe and controlled environment, training in skills difficult or impossible to recreate, training in human issues such as risk management and situational awareness. Research can investigate the latest capabilities of simulators and how other industries utilize them effectively. Professional development. Now, leadership and management skill training is very limited at the entry officer level, and we cannot afford to let them, quote, learn on the job. Researching the way business or the military train their leaders could establish plans for officer schools or preparation courses. One such idea is computer-based training and education. Post-secondary education has established a trend toward distant learning, most commonly utilized in the computer-based realm. Now, the advantages of this internet-based course for emergency responders include flexible scheduling, so you can work around their shift, and they can work at their own pace. Investigating colleges that offer online versions of classes and their success rates would help cognitive material move to the computer. Initiative 6, Developing Medical and Fitness Standards. Health Maintenance. The Fire Service Joint Labor Management Wellness Fitness Initiative has laid groundwork for proving the value of wellness in a fitness initiative in career departments through cost-benefit analysis. By comparing prevention programs costs with injury and time loss expenses, initial results show a substantial savings for health maintenance. By expanding the program and creating a database, data would be produced to allow future research for the individual components of an effective system. Diseases among emergency responders to be researched: cardiovascular disease, cancer, and reproductive health issues. Psychological response to emergencies. Both the Maryland and Indiana research projects explores the effects of firefighting on the human body. Know that many stressors have been identified. Future research might build on the results and look into ways conditions the body to be better prepared for the rigors. Candidate Physical Assessment, or CPAP, was created to evaluate the physiological capabilities of candidate and could benefit from research. This standardized physical agility test, is it appropriate? Does it work? Does it get a better candidate? Can we get data to support this? Initiative 7, Creating a Research Agenda. Data requirements. The first step in ensuring that any research conducted is accurate is to establish the requirements for data. Besides asserting what specific data are needed, formats, parameters, and rules must be created. For example, data related to exposure. One of the unique problems for the fire service data is exposure. We lack the means to track statistics for years of experience. Another issue with exposure is hours spent on fire prevention activities, both fire safety inspections and safety education. So it's difficult enough to track success with prevention without factoring in that many times it's not documented. Data sharing and access. Research can pay dividends by identifying other organizations or agencies that are presently collecting data related to your needs. By investigating what is already out there and how to partner with these other groups, we can improve our chances for success. Initiative 8, utilizing available technology. Since the early 1980s, self-contained breathing apparatus have become standard equipment for firefighting, but they are not drastically better than they were 30 years ago. There have been improvements, but respiratory protection is not where it needs to be. Time and technology have made many things that we used in 1982 obsolete. For the first time in 40 years, we have developed a new SCBA. Research now is needed to ensure that the new equipment is phased into the fire service and that it meets the needs and also increase safety. Another issue, fire detection and extinguishing agents. Most detection and extinguishing systems are not involved in the extinguishment process until the open flame stage. This area of research has numerous possibilities. Although water is still the extinguishing agent of choice for most fires, combustible metals have become more prevalent in vehicles and mobile equipment, and this presents a challenge both in terms of firefighting tactics and safety. Although Class D fire research has led to many significant changes, there has been an increased production of new additives and foams for Class A and B fires as well. Environmental concerns have influenced research for alternative, quote, green chemicals, with extinguishing agents such as halon being phased out. Initiative number 9, investigating fatalities, injuries, and near misses. Resources such as Everyone Goes Home campaign and the National Firefighter Near Miss Reporting System has created ways to share statistics and information gained from the fire service for the fire service. When supplement restraint systems were added as a standard equipment, surgeons started to see patients with devastating knee, hip, and pelvis injuries. These new injuries needed to be prevented. So researching into side curtain and lower airbag designs were made. So changes in safety practices as a result of initiative will create new problems. Example, so if more firefighters start working out, Initiative 6, the number of exercise injuries will increase. Initiative 10, blending grants and safety. One of the basic requirements of grants is to establish a need. Research is the most effective way to validate the necessity. Initiative 10 looks into requiring specific safe practices for applicants as well as preferences for the awarding of grants to programs that specifically increase safety. Initiative 11, establishing a response standard. Strategic response to risks. To establish a national response standard requires utilizing data gathered from incidences and comparing them to how departments operate. Perhaps the most effective way to succeed is to use a third party with a vast experience in scientific research to evaluate how we respond to incidences. Communications, operability, and inoperability. One of the vital components of response standards is the ability to communicate. Some firefighters can remedy how additional citizen bands or CB radios in some fire trucks 50 years ago brought communication to a whole new level. Communication issues are commonly exposed as critical contributing factors in line of duty death reports. One reason could be that many radio systems are not specifically designed for the fire service. but are the best option. Basically, they're ineffective in high heat or moisture areas, which we're exposed to a lot, and they do have dead spots in many buildings. So research could provide possibilities for more effective systems, looking at past failures and complaints. Lastly, performance measures create ways to increase organizational responsibility. Specifically in regards to safety is an important goal for the fire service. Some of the indicators utilized to rate the fire department are not truly measurements of performance. Initiative 12, examining response to violent incidences. Responses should be smart and effective. Standard procedures need to be established for potentially violent events. Another area of research that is desperately needed is in the way that fire and EMS work together with law enforcement at violent scenes, such as your active shooter type events. It is important for us to have a safe scene, but research might show us how to safely work in the quote warm zone and ultimately save more lives. Research needs to investigate new methods and procedures for emergency responders to work together in a multi-hazard situation while saving as many lives as possible and neutralizing the threat. Initiative number 13, providing emotional support. Substance abuse can result from the way that many people choose to cope with stress. Researching how alcohol and tobacco use can turn into abuse for some emergency responders could help prevent it. Studying the brain and designating alternative ways to train the mind or briefing after stressful events would provide alternatives to substance abuse. Post-incident stress management. The military has designated significant resources to study the effects of PTSD and ways to ease the significance of an event. Researching alternative methods of counseling and rehabilitation is needed. Researching the application of behavioral health assistance programs and the way to make them more available to more emergency responder agencies would be essential to providing psychological support. Initiative 14, enabling public education. Targeted problems and evaluation. Public education presentations frequently provide substandard education because they do not follow a script or a lesson plan. Identifying appropriate audiences, messages, and programs that are effective in reducing the number or severity of fires needs to be a priority. Public education has saved lives, but more research into its effectiveness is vital. Initiative 15, advocating residential fire sprinklers. Public awareness. The first step is making residential fire sprinklers commonplace is to convince everyone that they are not only effective but vital to life safety. 40 years ago, we debated the benefits of residential smoke alarms, and now we are debating the benefits of residential sprinklers. Changing the image of sprinklers from an unfunded mandate that creates water damage to effective life-saving equipment must be a priority. Active versus passive fire protection. Investigations need to be conducted that compare the options for fire protection and their associated costs, i.e., active fire protection versus passive fire protection. Initiative 16, engineering safety into the equipment. Much of the raw data to ensure safety is engineered into all new equipment already exist in the form of injury, fatalities, and near-miss reporting. By categorizing injuries by equipment being used, engineers can identify ways to build the equipment that is safer. Data collection. Once a research agenda or project has been identified, data must be collected, analyzed, and then utilized. A standard research suggests starting with the creation of a hypothesis. Creating a hypothesis. The use of a hypothesis can identify what data are needed. Data will have to be assembled as a form of evidence to support or disprove your hypothesis. Data collection plan. Once your hypotheses have been identified and recorded, it is time to collect the data needed for research. A data collection plan will ensure that a thorough process is used that allows the data to either support or oppose a specific hypothesis. There are several components of data collection plan. First, identify the form of data, hard or soft, basically quantitative or qualitative. Identify the types of data and identify the data collection points. Once the data has been received, they need to be analyzed. Interpreting what the data actually means is important as the data received. Distorted data can occur as a result of misunderstanding or bias. Utilizing the data. After completing the data collection, results can be used to further research agenda. In 2000, a summit reduced medical errors in the United States, creating a research agenda, medical errors and patient safety. Data was assembled into 3 project timelines: short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals. Research is responsible for the science that responds with us on every emergency call. We do not use research to its fullest potential to create a safe work environment. Initiative 7 calls for a national research agenda and industrial-wide efforts to design a system to collect, evaluate, and utilize data to strengthen each of the initiatives. By channeling experts in a scientific research to improve safety, we can reduce injuries and death. Creating a research agenda clarifies what and how the data needs to be collected. Research can be basic or applied. Data can be quantitative or qualitative. A hypothesis is a prediction of why something occurs and is posed as an if-then statement. Research and development techniques could be applied to firefighter line of duty deaths. A national research agenda would be beneficial to each initiative. Initiative 1, Initiative 2, Initiative 3, Initiative 4, Initiative 5, Initiative 6, Initiative 7, Initiative 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, as well as 13, 14, 15, and 16. The use of a hypothesis can identify what data is needed. Interpreting what the data actually means is as important as the data itself. In an effort to best use the data, they should be utilized in short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals.